Welcome to NTD News, I'm Paul Greeny. Here are today's top stories. The latest in Syria. Russia and Turkey have reached a deal to remove Kurdish fighters near Turkey's border with Syria. In the agreement, troops from both Russia and Turkey will jointly patrol the Turkish-ruled safe zone. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo speaking about U.S. diplomacy today. He touched on Syria, North Korea, Afghanistan and China. Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau will remain in power despite several scandals. However, his party suffered losses in yesterday's parliamentary election. New research linking vaping to lung cancer in mice. The new findings come amid growing health concerns and an increased reported deaths related to vaping. And Japan's monarch officially announcing his ascension to the throne in a centuries-old ceremony. Dignitaries attending from over 100 countries. Russia and Turkey have agreed to a safe zone in northern Syria that will remove Kurdish fighters along the border. It's not yet clear, though, if the Kurds will agree to the deal.
According to the deal, starting on Wednesday, Russian and Syrian forces will remove the Syrian Kurdish YPG militia to beyond 19 miles from the Turkish border. The troops will jointly patrol a narrower strip of land in the safe zone. Russia's foreign minister said the Kurds would also withdraw from the towns of Manbij and Tal Rifat. The memorandum noted that Russia and Turkey will also work to contain terrorist elements from springing up in the area.
Our resolution acknowledges the vital role that our Kurdish and Arab Syrian partners have played in rooting out and destroying the ISIS caliphate.
The move comes about 2 weeks after the White House announced the withdrawal of American forces from the border. Defense Secretary Mark Esper also echoed President Trump's message.
And we certainly didn't sign up to help them establish an autonomous Kurdish state. That was the conflict that the Turks put us in between.
Despite the U.S. withdrawal, U.S. officials have said President Trump is prepared to use military force again.
Secretary of State Mike Pompeo in Washington today, speaking about what he called the untold story of the Trump administration's diplomacy.
Pompeo began by talking about the situation in Syria. He said it was not in Turkey's best interest to continue its incursion. He added that it was a setback in the shared fight against ISIS, but said he thinks the situation is in a better place now.
The truth was that President Trump was prepared to cause and raise costs for Turkey in the event that they continued their incursion. So the President used America's economic might, our economic power, to avoid a kinetic conflict with a NATO ally.
He said that while the situation was complicated, it is his responsibility as America's chief diplomat to help countries see the world as it is.
The truth is that Iran is the aggressor, not the aggrieved. The truth is that China is a strategic competitor at best that uses coercion and corruption as its tools of statecraft.
Pompeo continued that the U.S. can't rely on failed strategies to achieve denuclearization in North Korea, nor can it achieve peace in Afghanistan without every party at the table.
The truth is, too, that restoring democracy in Venezuela is in our hemisphere's interest, and we should expend considerable effort to achieve that. And the truth is that every nation has a responsibility to share the burden of these global mission sets to achieve security around the world.
Turkey's 120-hour ceasefire is set to come to a close Tuesday night, but Turkey's President Tayyip Erdogan renewed threats to resume fighting if Syrian Kurds don't depart before the deadline runs out.
The Senate today overwhelmingly voted to let North Macedonia join NATO. The vote was 91-2. The country has been trying to join the Defense Alliance for years, but was blocked by Greece over a name dispute. This February, Macedonia changed its name to North Macedonia, paving the way for its NATO membership. If approved by NATO leaders, it will be the organization's 30th member. And Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau will keep his job after the Liberal Party won Canada's 43rd general election yesterday.
Polls had the Liberals and Conservatives in a dead heat right up to Election Day on October 21. The Liberals won enough seats to form a minority government.
We will continue to fight climate change. We will get guns off our streets, and we will keep investing in Canadians.
Trudeau is viewed as one of the world's most high-profile progressive leaders. The 47-year-old is the son of former Canadian Prime Minister Pierre Trudeau. The Liberals came to power by winning a majority in 2015 as a charismatic Trudeau promised sunny ways and championed diversity. His popularity dropped after news broke early this year that he pressed the country's Attorney General to use a deferred prosecution agreement for criminal charges against Quebec construction giant SNC-Lavalin. Despite all of his troubles, Trudeau managed to hold on to power. A party needs to win 170 seats out of 338 for a majority, and the Liberals won 157. The Conservatives won 121 seats, but also won the popular vote. U.S. President Donald Trump, whose relationship with Trudeau has been testy at times, tweeted his congratulations on a wonderful and hard-fought victory. Trump added, "I look forward to working with you toward the betterment of both our countries." Rahul Vaidyanath, NTD News, Parliament Hill, Ottawa.
President Trump's advisor on economic policy said today he thinks the United States-Mexico-Canada agreement could be passed this year. Larry Kudlow said talks with House Democrats are progressing and that the deal could be passed by Congress this fall. House Speaker Nancy Pelosi said 3 weeks ago that the talks are progressing, but she stopped short of saying when the trade deal might come up for a vote. House Democrats are stuck on the enforcement measures in the agreement, saying that they need to be stronger. So far, Mexico has ratified the deal, but Canada has not. The Hong Kong Tankmen and the Civil Human Rights Front have been awarded prizes in the U.S. for standing up for democracy in Hong Kong.
On Monday, U.S. Congressman Jim McGovern presented the 2019 Citizen Power Award to the Hong Kong Civil Human Rights Front. The group is a pan-democracy organization that has organized some of Hong Kong's largest demonstrations.
And to think about the courage and the guts it has taken for them to organize these peaceful demonstrations, for them to persist in the face of what we see as increasing brutality from the government of Hong Kong.
The group says it's committed to peaceful demonstrations. However, last Wednesday, the group's convener, Jimmy Sham, was allegedly attacked in the head with hammers by several unknown people. He was badly injured, but survived.
I want the people of Hong Kong to know that there are people in the United States Congress who are on their side, and I'm proud to stand with them.
The other award recipient is also being hailed a hero in Hong Kong. His name is Pastor Anthony, and some are calling him Hong Kong's tank man. On August 25th, during the clash between police and protesters, Anthony stood in front of a policeman who was pointing a gun at protesters. He asked him not to shoot, only to be kicked in the stomach. A student activist received the award on his behalf. Last week, the House passed the Hong Kong Human Rights and Democracy Act, a bill meant to punish Beijing for its interference in Hong Kong. The bill has to be passed in the Senate, then signed by the president before it becomes law.
I think this is one of those bills that's a must-pass bill.
Well, I continue to believe that the Senate will do the right thing, and I hope that the president will do the right thing as well. And
reporting by Kitty Wong, NTD News.
As public concern over the risks of vaping continue to grow, recent research now shows a link between vaping nicotine and lung cancer in mice. NTD's Penny Zhou has more from the study's leader.
Professor Mu Shun Tong from NYU School of Medicine said he wished he was wrong when he saw the data, but the strict research process told him that this is the reality.
22.5% of mice develop lung cancer. It's the tumor, not the tumor. It's cancer.
That's what happened after 40 mice breathed the vapor over a year. It's the same product millions of Americans use every day. Professor Tang said that equals to 3 to 6 years of vaping for a human being. Aside from lung cancer, nearly 60% of those mice developed precancerous changes in their bladder issues. In contrast, the mice inhaled vapor without nicotine, or those that breathed filtered air, had much lesser rates of either conditions. The research is the first that links vaping nicotine to cancer, at least in mice. But Professor Tang said the basic mechanism that caused cancerous changes in cells are basically the same for mice and humans. And since e-cigarettes have only been popular for around 8 years, it's probably only a matter of time for the consequences to show in humans.
Human society unwittingly actually conduct this big experiment right now.
The research is the first that links vaping nicotine to cancer, at least in mice. But Professor Tang said the basic mechanism that caused cancerous changes in cells are basically the same for mice and humans. And since e-cigarettes have only been popular for around 8 years, it's probably only a matter of time for the consequences to show in humans. Before the outbreak of vaping-related lung injuries this summer in America, e-cigarettes were considered safer than smoking. That's because many think tobacco is only harmful when it's burned. In a previous study, Professor Tang treated human cells with nicotine and detected DNA damage that corresponds with those caused by cancer-causing chemicals found in cigarettes. That study, combined with the recent one, showed that the burning process in smoking is not a necessary precursor for cancerous changes. As long as there is nicotine, be it cigarette or e-cigarette, cancerous changes can occur.
So it's a nicotine. To answer your question, so we see the effect nicotine. If we don't put the nicotine in there, probably less harmful.
As for what society should do about this,
the more wise people in the political or law, social study can make that decision. From the basic research point of view, that e-cigarette is harmful. And so the young people, non-smokers, shouldn't take e-cigarette as a safer.
As the population of tobacco smoking slowly decreases, the number of people vaping are reportedly increasing, and the United States is the largest vaping market. The latest official data showed that nearly 1,500 lung injuries and 33 confirmed deaths in the country are associated with e-cigarette. Penny Zhou, NTD News, New York.
14% of the nation's homeless population lives in New York City, and families make up the biggest percentage of the homeless there. NTD's Miguel Moreno has more on a new report that says domestic violence is what's driving nearly half of these families into shelters.
The murders of 4 homeless men in Chinatown put New York City's record-level homelessness problem under the media spotlight.
I believe it's getting out of control. It's all over the place.
And in a new report, the city's comptroller found that
domestic violence has become the leading driver of homelessness in New York City by far.
The report says that 41% of families entered New York City shelters because of domestic violence last fiscal year. And in his findings, Stringer called on the city to expand mental health services for survivors of domestic violence and emphasize permanent housing for them. While some feel this is a step in the right direction, others say there's more to be addressed, like the opioid crisis.
It's sort of like there's the expression, you give a man a fish, you feed him for a day, you teach a man a fish, you feed him for a lifetime. There's something more that you need to get to than just giving somebody a roof over their head or giving somebody a job, but I don't think that really solves, homelessness.
The city reports that in this fiscal year, families with children accounted for over 39,000 of the homeless in shelters. Anya Duggan with the Partnership for the Homeless, an organization focused on homelessness prevention, told us that other than domestic violence, drug addictions and overcrowding are also driving people into shelters.
Housing is so expensive in New York. Very often you have families living doubled up or tripled up. And there are moments, when that just becomes untenable for a family.
Duggan said that the most cost-effective way to solve homelessness is by moving people into housing rather than placing them into shelters. The comptroller did not propose a solution for domestic violence, but he wants to see the city triple the number of affordable housing units and end the practice of placing families in hotel rooms rented by Department of Homeless Services. Miguel Moreno, NTD News, New York.
Air New Zealand said today it will launch a non-stop flight service between Auckland and New York in October 2020. It's a bid to take advantage of strong visitor growth from North America. The country's flag carrier also said it will stop the lower-performing Los Angeles to London route by the same date. Acting Chief Executive Officer Jeff McDowell said withdrawal from the Atlantic will free up aircraft capacity to faster-growing markets. And up next, French winemakers speak about how new U.S. tariffs could affect sales. Our correspondent in France has that and more after the break. French winemakers say they fear a decline in their sales caused by a 25% tariff from the US. The tariff comes in response to taxes imposed by France on US tech companies. The winemakers say they don't want to be held hostages in the disagreement. NTD's David Vives has the story.
After several threats, the Trump administration on Friday imposed 25% duties on French winemakers' wares. The move came after France's President Emmanuel Macron earlier this year set a new 3% tax on U.S. tech companies and applied it retroactively from January. The latest tariff has brought little cheer to winemakers who fear their businesses could suffer. Lionel Lavelle, a winemaker in the south of France, produces an average of 1.5 million bottles and exports more than 200,000 of them to the United States, which he said represents over 15% of their revenue. We fear a sharp decrease in imports of French wines because we're competing with all the other wine-producing countries like Chile, South Africa, and wines from California. We mustn't forget that the United States produces its own wine. In a press release, France's Federation of Wine and Spirits Exporters deplored the new tariff. According to the Federation, in 2018, sales of these products on the American market amounted to more than $1 billion for nearly 14 million 2.5-gallon cases. Over the first 6 months of 2019, these exports increased by 10% in value and 2% in volume. The Federation's president says the duty isn't good for consumers or producers. But some producers remain optimistic. For the president of the Wine Producers Union in the Jura region, good wine will always find a customer. Really, I think that quality wines continue to exist, and there will be people who like them. This might impact the industry at large, but for our part, we make great quality wine. A Federation spokesperson told us they were negotiating with the French government in the hopes of avoiding any potential losses. Reporting by David Vives in France.
Japan's monarch Naruhito has officially proclaimed his enthronement. More than 100 dignitaries from around the world were in attendance in a ritual-bound, centuries-old ceremony.
The curtain opens on Japan's Reiwa, the era of beautiful harmony. From atop a pavilion in Pine Hall, the most prestigious place in Tokyo's Imperial Palace, monarch Naruhito officially declares his enthronement.
Always wishing for the happiness of the people and the peace of the world.
The visuals are very impressive today. The taking of the throne, a 1,000-year tradition, but it's what they will do going forward with this message of promoting peace, promoting happiness. This is the Reiwa era that we have anticipated and that they are going to fulfill.
Adorned in 30-pound robes styled centuries ago, the new monarch and his wife Masako are a surprisingly modern couple. He went to Oxford, she went to Harvard. Both speak English, perfect for hobnobbing with dignitaries from 174 countries. Prime Minister Shinzo Abe briefly putting politics aside, shouting, "Long live the king!" Before resuming an exhausting schedule of at least 50 bilateral meetings with leaders from nearly every corner of the world. This is perhaps Japan's biggest moment in the global spotlight until next summer's Tokyo 2020 Olympics. On a rainy, windy day, a small crowd gathered outside the palace.
I came because I wanted to see the emperor, says Hiroto Tokuda. If I'm lucky, I can take his photo.
The rain stopped, the wind calmed, capping off a colorful celebration of the Reiwa era.
Up next, California researchers are creating an app to alert people to earthquakes. That and more after the break.
When you look at TV networks in America, a soundbite and fight-it-out culture prevails on news and commentary programs. As a Canadian, I'm fascinated with America, and I wanted to offer American thought leaders an opportunity to share their thoughts in a deep dive format, where we can explore their ideas together. And so American Thought Leaders was born. The world's most brilliant thinkers believed that open discourse was the key to greatness. However, all around the world, we see that discourse is being stifled and political agendas have subverted media. The Epoch Times launched its Global Thought Leaders program to bring back this great tradition of free thought. As the host of American Thought Leaders, every week I interview some of the most intriguing minds on the most pressing issues of our time. Be sure to check out our new episodes every week.
There's now an app that lets Californians know ahead of time when an earthquake is about to hit. NTD's Eiling Ang has the story.
This is the accelerometer in the phone, so you can see the data.
For the first time, a group of Berkeley researchers came up with a way to warn people with an app ahead of time when an earthquake is about to occur. It's called MyShake, and it receives early warning alerts from the Joint U.S. Geological Survey and Shake Alert system.
Shake Alert is a system that uses our regular seismometers to detect earthquakes quickly and produce the information within a few seconds of the earthquake starting and send out messages then, and those messages go to the MyShake app.
The messages then pop up on phones with the downloaded MyShake app. In other words, if Shake Alert is the generator, MyShake is the receiver. People will receive an alert, usually a few seconds before, earthquakes with a magnitude of 4.5 or greater strike. The time varies depending on the location for when people can receive the alert before, during, or after the shaking happens.
Because the physics of the Earth, because our system is we're still working to improve the system, there are a variety of reasons. So it all depends on where you are relative to the earthquake starting.
They will still work on how quickly the information can be delivered and how many people need to receive it in a particular area.
With the MyShake app and on Android phones, we can actually ask for a receipt so we know how quickly the phone got the message.
They are working to install more seismic stations throughout California and across the Pacific West Coast. It's only used in California for now because the state of California asked them to send alerts to everybody in the region before the next big earthquake hits. Hellweg reminds people that an alert is only a notification and won't be helpful if people do not know what to do next. People should drop cover and hold and have a survival plan for when an earthquake hits. Eileen Ng, NTD News, Berkeley, California.
For the first time in 2 years, McDonald's reported a quarterly profit that missed Wall Street estimates. It's been investing heavily in sprucing up its U.S. outlets and speeding up its delivery. Its shares went down 4% on the announcement.
Shares of McDonald's dropped on Tuesday after the company reported a quarterly profit that missed Wall Street expectations. It's the burger chain's first miss in 2 years, and it comes as McDonald's invests aggressively in revamping its 14,000 restaurants in the U.S. to include digital ordering kiosks, mobile ordering, and pay and pickup services. And sales did rise 4.8% in the third quarter, but that fell below the nearly 5.2% growth analysts expected, according to IBES data from Refinitiv. This comes as competition in the restaurant space is intensifying, with rival fast food chains challenging McDonald's dominance with value meals and plant-based food options. Burger King and KFC, for example, jumped on the plant-based burger trend faster than McDonald's, which is currently testing a burger using Beyond Meat patties in Canada.
Up next, jet makers using meat waste and other novelty biofuels to power luxury jets. This amid growing concerns of air pollution. That and more after the break.
Our investigative reporters at the Epoch Times have spent 18 months uncovering the biggest political scandal in modern history. We connected the dots around Spygate, the actions by Obama-era officials against Trump's 2016 presidential campaign. Join me on Declassified as we bring you up-to-date developments on this unfolding scandal.
Amid growing concerns of air pollution, jet makers are using biofuels deemed less harmful to the environment, including cooking oil and meat waste.
Flights by the mega rich on their private jets could soon be powered by meat waste. That's because luxury jet makers like Bombardier and Gulfstream are luring buyers with not only their sleek silhouettes and plush cabins, but also their use of alternative fuels, as pressure mounts on the aviation industry to curb emissions. At the world's biggest industry show in Las Vegas, 5 Gulfstream jets are using fuel from beef tallow. And that's not all. Biofuel producer World Energy, which produces the fuel used by Gulfstream, says the latest waste-based fuels include fats, grease, and oils, all byproducts of the food industry. Business jet operators like airlines hope that adopting renewable fuel to curb emissions could make the jets more attractive to environmentally conscious buyers, especially corporations facing questions over sustainability from shareholders.
One of the most visited lighthouses on the Danish west coast is being moved today because of coastal erosion.
For 120 years, the lighthouse has been by the northern Danish coast, but years of coastal erosion have threatened the lighthouse. Hundreds of people braved the cold and wind to see the lighthouse slowly being moved to a more secure location. The 82-foot tall lighthouse put on wheels and rails for the nearly 200-foot trip inland. Because the lighthouse is such a popular tourist attraction, bringing in 250,000 people each year, the decision was made to move it inland instead of letting the sea overtake it. Originally, the lighthouse stood 656 feet from the sea. However, each year the coast erodes at a rate of 5 feet, causing the sea to encroach ever more. If the lighthouse hadn't been moved, it was expected to fall into the sea by 2020.
And that's all for today's NTD News. Thanks for tuning in. I'm Paul Greaney.